And we're going to turn now to that stunning indictment of former House Speaker Dennis Hastert. The man who came to Washington with a squeaky clean image, a mission to clean up Congress, now facing the prospect of jail time. And this morning, we have new information on the hush money scandal pursued by the FBI. ABC's Jim Avila has that story.
He came from practically nowhere, a high school teacher and wrestling coach from a small rural district outside Chicago, to become the most powerful man in Congress. When he resigned, he seemed to disappear again, but then emerging this week in scandal. Former Speaker of the House Dennis Hastert accused of bank fraud and lying to the FBI. A longtime friend says the Illinois Republican is baffled.
There's no question he's been blackmailed, and I hope that it becomes exposed and he's vindicated.
Sources tell ABC News Hastert reportedly agreed to pay $3.5 million as hush money to a former student he allegedly sexually abused sometime during his 16-year tenure at Yorkville High School in Illinois. And sources say there is a second person who was allegedly victimized in a similar way by Hastert when he was a student. He did not ask for any hush money. But one of Hastert's former wrestling stars tells ABC News that's not the person he knew.
I stand behind him 100%, 110%, 200%. I'd be in his back pocket in Washington till the end.
Hastert attracted federal suspicion 3 years ago after making 15 separate withdrawals of $50,000 from his bank. When questioned, authorities say he started taking out smaller amounts, more than 100 withdrawals of just under the reporting limit of $10,000. Hastert told the FBI he kept the cash because he didn't think the banking system was safe. Prosecutors allege that was a lie. This week, the longest-serving Republican speaker in the history of the House, Denny Hastert, is expected to be arraigned. For This Week, Jim Avila, ABC News, Washington.
Thanks to Jim for that. Let's bring in our ABC News legal analyst, Dan Abrams. So, Dan, so the FBI gets alerted to these withdrawals from Dennis Hastert's bank account. Walk us through how they decide to take a case like this.
Well, look, they want to know what's going on. They want to know, is there money laundering? Is this connected to terrorism?
The bank tells them these withdrawals.
Right, so the bank gives them the heads up. And then the potential crime is when he changes his behavior. So it's not a crime to take out large sums of money. It is a crime to then structure your withdrawals to try not to trigger this.
So had he just written a check, no problem.
Checks are okay. Wire transfers are okay because there's more accountability there. This crime is targeted at accountability to make sure that people can't take out enormous sums of money, large sums of money, without knowing anything about where it's going.
So the FBI comes to Dennis Hastert, says, hey, well, look at all these withdrawals. What are his options when they come to him?
Well, either he can come clean and he can say, I'm being extorted. Here's what happened. He obviously didn't want to talk about that.
What David Letterman did.
Yeah, except in this particular case, he didn't want to admit it. He wanted to keep it quiet. He could have said nothing. He could have hired a lawyer and said, and this would have been the best thing legally for him to have done, is to have said nothing. Or he could do what he's accused of doing, which is lying in this context. But let's remember, these crimes that we're talking about, lying to the FBI and this structuring financial crime, are not crimes that are typically charged without more. Usually you charge these crimes because you're trying to bring someone down for something larger.
Is this a form of a kind of like celebrity prosecution?
I think this is a gotcha prosecution. I don't think if he was Dennis Higgins as opposed to Dennis Hastert, they would have charged him here. Because once you investigate, once you realize that this isn't about drugs, this isn't about terrorism, this isn't about money laundering, they typically drop these. That's where you have to wonder, does the underlying allegations of misconduct on his part weigh into the prosecutor's decisions? It shouldn't.
And you think it must, though?
It shouldn't as a legal matter, but it is hard to understand why you'd charge in this case, absent the fact that he's an incredibly famous, formerly powerful individual, and B, the underlying misconduct, neither of which the federal authorities should be taking into consideration.
And what are the chances that you'll actually see some kind of a prosecution for extortion of individual A?
You know, that's the big question. And this is one of those difficult choices prosecutors have to make. We don't know if he's going to be charged in connection with this case. I'd expect the result here would be that Hastert would plead. Because even though these are charges that typically you wouldn't see against someone else, it's going to be very hard for him to defend against. I mean, he's probably guilty of the crimes, but that doesn't mean that he would have been charged if he was.
So if he pleads, can he avoid jail time?
Very possibly, yeah.
Okay, Dan Abrams, thanks very much.
Okay.